How can you stay connected to your employees in today's increasingly remote work environment? Did you know that 52% of employees feel less connected and 24% feel lonely? Social Flowers is the easy, modern way of sending florist-delivered flowers, which act as your presence in the important moments of your employees' lives. You can send flowers to any employee using their email address or mobile number. They receive a link. They choose where and when to receive the flowers. All personal information is kept private. Send flowers to celebrate a birthday, a new baby, or an achievement. Flowers can uplift somebody during an illness, a loss of a loved one, or just to brighten somebody's day. Visit socialflowers.com/work to see how flowers can help you touch the lives of your employees and stay connected. Welcome to the Work Trends podcast from Talent Culture. I'm your host, Megan M. Biro. Every week I interview interesting people who are reimagining work. And be sure to check out our Work Trends Twitter chat events calendar located at talentculture.com on the podcast page. Welcome to the Talent Culture Work Trends podcast. I'm your host, Megan M. Biro, and today we have a very, very special guest who's going to talk to us about work culture and building a, yes, I'm going to say this word, happy workplace. As we go through our lives and our careers, it's important to build an environment where everybody feels empowered and encouraged to reach their highest potential. Our guest today is here to share insights on key elements of successful organizations and how to create a work culture that actually promotes growth. Today, we are joined by Greg Lederman, a professional speaker, performance coach, and New York Times bestselling author of multiple award-winning books. Greg is a professional speaker, performance coach, and New York Times bestselling author of multiple award-winning books. As the founder and CEO of Brand Integrity, Greg led a team of culture enthusiasts to implement programs that help clients achieve unprecedented culture-enhancing employee engagement scores that were 3 times the national average. In addition, nearly 70% of Brand Integrity's clients were noted on Best Place to Work list, either in their region, their industry, or Fortune 100 Best Companies to Work For annual ranking. Greg's Great Life Now and Great Leader Now books and programs take participants on an inward, life-changing journey to transform how they live and how they lead. I mean, what's not to love about this, right? Welcome, Greg.
Thank you, Megan. What a great intro.
Well, I got to tell you, Greg, you and I go back quite a ways, and really, really excited to have you back with me here today. So let's get on with it.
Fantastic. And by the way, I'd love to have you do all my introductions because that was very animated and much appreciated. You set the bar high for me.
Hey, I try, right? So listen, what are the biggest challenges organizations face in creating the work culture they desire?
The short answer is leadership. I'd say leadership at all levels. Organizations need to really change the way that they're thinking about how they develop leaders. Simply training leadership skills is not enough in today's day and age. If you want to have a stronger work culture, you need more great leaders. And you don't get them by teaching them hiring skills, conversation skills. Of course, those things are important, but really, truly great leadership begins from within, which means there's some a journey that people need to go through to really understand who am I as a human as well as who am I as a leader. So the biggest challenge they have is they can't get out of their own ways because they're doing leadership development in ways that are just not as effective in today's day and age. Especially, Megan, if I could add one more point, you're dealing with a workforce that is suffering, literally suffering from stress, burnout, mental fatigue at levels we've never seen before. All the more reason we need organizations to invest in developing their leaders, but leaders also need to invest in developing themselves. But my main point is it's got to go beyond just skills development.
No, you've actually need to live it. And I know that's hard. I know I'm a leader. I get it. It's hard. But going inward, there's some magic that happens there, isn't there? I mean, there's pain. Nothing in this world is without pain, though, right? That's where the good stuff is, isn't it?
Yeah, I tell my audience members and anyone I'm coaching that unless you're willing to do the painful honesty and do the work that it truly takes to understand who am I and why, you'll never be a consistently great leader. You won't, because you're bringing too much garbage from your past. If you've never really taken the time to deal with your fears as a human being, then how are you ever going to understand why you're thinking, speaking, and acting the way you are as a leader? You simply don't.
So in your keynotes and workshops, your audience learns the 4 truths to being a great leader. Can you share with us what they are and why we should care? What makes these so important right now? I mean, you and I both know, Greg, it's noisy out there.
Yeah. Well, this is what I tell audience members before I share a deeply personal story. I say, hey, I'm going to tell you about the 4 truths over the next 60 to 90 minutes. And they were inspired by my mom. And while you've never met my mom, she's about to have a big impact on your life, and because she did on mine. So my mom, she passed away when I was very young, and she left behind the greatest gift ever. I'll give you the abbreviated story here. But she left behind for my brother and I a 8-page letter that I got when I was 12 years old that shared her deepest thoughts about what it takes to live a great life. And over time, as I've reread that letter over the years, during happy times in my life, during sad times, just during important times, I continued to glean more and more insights that evolved into this concept of the 4 truths to being a great leader. And the first insight is based on this idea that your life is a game, and you need to play the game the right way by a certain set of rules. Those rules are your values. And the first truth to being a great leader and to being a great human is you make the rules. It's as simple as that. You can't lose in the game of life because you make the rules. And if you know your rules, if you believe in your rules, those core values that are meaningful to you, and you follow your rules, you're going to win in this game of life. That's the first truth.
Absolutely. And I want to hear examples of those.
So for instance, my core values that I developed very young in my life, they've evolved slightly, but my core values are things like integrity without compromise, having patience, owning it, loving and accepting others. So I have 5 core values. They guide everything that I do in life. They are not just my reputation because of the way I think, speak, and act. As a result of these values, they are truly, truly my guiding light on a day-to-day basis. They're my rules for how I play the game of life. And if leaders don't understand what their values are and how they align with the organization's values, I don't know how you optimize your fit within the organization or your ability to lead.
Well, and how many leaders out there don't even know that this is available to them, like themselves, like they are in charge?
I have an answer to that question. It's very quantitative. It's about 80% is a conservative number of leaders who do not know what their core values are. And you're saying, well, how the hell do you know that? Well, I've done this little study here no less than 1,000 times from the stage in front of a group of leaders over the last decade and a half, where I say, folks, tell me, show of hands, or sometimes I'll use a technology like a Slido so I can really quantify it up quickly. And I'll say, how many of you could break out your phones right now and text me your core values, those key ideas or core values that are near and dear to you, that guide how you think, speak, and act? Show of hands. And if I'm in front of a group of leaders, the most that ever go up is about 20% of the hands. And then if I say to them, okay, for those of you with your hands up, if I bumped into you next Tuesday and said, hey, remind me, what were those core values? Would you share the exact same words, and would they have the same meaning to you? And then there's usually some laughter in the room, and then the hands go down. And then I have to very quickly say, look, I'm not trying to make anybody feel bad, but the reality is there is a different way of managing your life, a values-driven life. And that's a big part of the keynote that I take people through.
Yeah, one of the things I think is cool, I noticed in your profile, you call yourself a truth seeker and life changer. In what ways do you feel you have an ability to change people's lives? And this is a serious question.
Well, first off, the simple answer is I get people to ask themselves the difficult questions and have the courage to have the painful honesty to answer them. So for instance, we just covered one of them. The first truth. You asked me to tell you the 4 truths. You make the rules. You can't lose if you make the rules. You're playing your game. As long as you know them, again, as long as you believe them, and as long as you follow them. The second truth is you've got lots of time. This ties in with what you were saying about around being a truth seeker, a life changer. I would say the great majority of leaders that I work with, nearly all, and when I say nearly, I want to say all, they say they don't have time. They've got this like raging river of responsibility. No one has enough time. But the reality is, if you really look at your life, you have 3 buckets of time. We all do. You have the exact same 3 buckets I have. You sleep, you work, and then there's something I call the everything else bucket. And when you really look at, and this is a journey I take my audience through, and I actually give them a tool for tracking their time for up to 2 weeks so they can prove to themselves that they might sleep about 45 to 55 hours a week. They might work between 40 and 50 hours a week. They're usually shocked at how much less work time they actually have than they thought they had, which tends to leave like 60, 70, in some cases 80 hours a week in that everything else bucket. So what people realize, and this is where the life changing comes in, is that they don't really have a time problem. They have a priority challenge. And obviously I share these insights by sharing some examples. I mean, I'm as guilty as anybody. I've been a leader for a long time, and I was a crappy leader for a long time. And when I was at my worst was when I was telling myself I had a time problem, and I learned how to discover how to manage my time differently. So truth number 2 is you've got lots of time, and I'm able to prove it to every single member of my audience and everyone that I work with.
What about, Greg, the culture of the company that the leader happens to be in, right? Like that has to meet that leader for that moment.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. You know, one of the things that I encourage every leader to do is to create their rules and then align those rules. I have a little exercise called the values match. Look to align your values with the organization's values. Do you have a match? You know, where do your beliefs align with the organization's? Where do they not align? So where might you need to change the way you think and act in order to better align at work? Or if there's just not alignment, then maybe it's time to test out the job market.
Well, or maybe it's time to just have more difficult conversations with the management team or your teammates, right? I mean, people are scared about it. I think even today, it's like, wow, you know, that trust and transparency thing that I've been talking about for, oh gosh, a decade plus. I mean, who's actually putting that into place? And how are we reaping rewards from that kind of trust and transparency? I'm feeling kind of philosophical all of a sudden, Greg. You know?
Well, I'll tell you.
Something about this conversation.
The changing workforce to this, you know, more virtual model, flex model, it's not making it easier for leaders. And one of the first questions I ask every group I'm in front of is, hey, has anyone here mastered leadership? Because if you have, you got to enlighten me, right? I mean, no one really masters leadership. It's really hard to be a leader. You know, as I say quite often, it's hard enough being a human in today's day and age. Leading other humans is really difficult. And with that said, everybody wants to have this strong work culture because we know if you have a strong work culture, then you can have a consistently good, if not great, customer experience. But there's something that comes first before just defining our culture and then hoping everybody's going to deliver upon it. You have to have enough great leaders. So getting back to your first question, that's why I say the biggest challenge organizations face today is a lack of leadership. And they've got to figure out a way for 2 things to happen. They've got to start investing in leaders, positioning them to truly understand themselves as people as well as leaders. And second, leaders, humans at work, supervisors, managers, all the way up to VPs and executives, they have to invest in themselves. They've got to take the time to do, as you mentioned a few minutes ago, the work, right? You've got to have the painfully honest questions with yourself on who am I as a person, and then how do I demonstrate who I am as a leader, who I desire to be as a leader.
There's a neon that's appearing in front of me saying 3 words: do the work. That's for myself as well today, Greg. So thank you for the inspiration, because that's exactly what it is. It's work.
It is, but it doesn't have to be super difficult. There's got to be some humility in that, Megan. People need to really think about not only who am I today based on how I think, speak, and act, but who do I aspire to be? And you got to get the ego out of the way. There's a lot of really bad leaders out there that have gotten up to high levels, so they falsely believe that what they've been doing has been working. But getting back to your point, they've eroded trust everywhere they've gone.
Yeah, ain't that the truth? I have to say, in your book, you refer to the mountains for growth as a way to improve your life at home and at work. And as you know, anyone out there who listens to me enough knows I believe those 2 things are the same. But what are these mountains, and where the heck did they come from?
So the letter that my mom left me that I've shared with you about, and I got when I was 12 years old, there was one quote in there that the first thing that really resonated with me out of this 8 pages of insight was a message to her from her that said, to Andy and Greg, once you have self-worth, you can move mountains. So whatever price you have to pay to get it, pay it, with 2 exclamation points. I'll never forget the way this was written. Once you have self-worth, you can move mountains. And the mountains that my mom was referring to in my, from what I could glean, turned out to be 7 different areas. of all of our lives that we all have. And by the way, there's a hierarchy to them. So I'll start at the bottom, if you can imagine, like the base of the base mountain. You've got your physical fitness and health, right? How are you doing in that area? Are you taking care of yourself physically? Then there's your mental well-being, right? Your emotional well-being. Then there's your relationship mountain, your time and productivity mountain, your career, your finances, and then your contribution to society, what I call the give back mountain. How do you give back to your community around you? Now, whether you're at home or at work, different people have to focus at different times on different areas of these mountains. So one of the things that I take the audience through is figuring out, where am I today in each of these mountains, and where do I want to be in the future? Because once you start to figure out some priority of this is where I need to focus as a human as well as a leader, now you're starting to improve your self-worth and become a more effective and trusted leader. It's all connected.
Do you see these mountains for growth in various levels or priorities? Like, are they the same size mountain?
No, they're different for each individual, Megan. That's a great question. They're different for each individual and they evolve over time. Like at some points you might be doing great from an emotional perspective, but so you don't focus on it as much. But here's the thing, and this is what I coach people on all the time. You don't want to spend all your time on your relationship mountain when your emotional well-being is a mess. Because what's the point? Or how many people do you know have you met in the workplace? I've met a ton of these people. They're so focused on their career mountain to drive their financial mountain that they destroy all the relationships over time. No one's ever sitting there at the end of their life going, oh, I wish I made more money. I mean, no, they think about and talk about the relationships they had, those experiences with those people.
You have to prioritize it because in the end, right, we're getting philosophical again, but this is about life. That's what I love about this conversation. It's not just about career. It's about getting up every morning and feeling like you're making a difference and you matter, first and foremost to yourself.
Yeah, exactly. That concept of self-worth is something I was blessed because of my mom to think about at a very, very early age. Like, what does it mean to have self-worth? And according to my mom and the insights I gleaned, it means you know who you are and you know how to live it, how to be it. Those are the values, right? That was truth one, know your rules. Truth two was you've got lots of time. And you want to know the third truth? Your habits cause your happiness and success. Your habits cause your happiness and success. And notice I said your happiness before success, because my mom did not share with me that be successful and you will be happy, right? Happiness is not something you find on the other side of people, places, and things. Happiness is something that you get because you do the work that you keep referencing. I love the way you said that earlier. You have to do the work of knowing who you are and why that matters.
Well, and I think some people do not equate, and this is a really sad statement I'm about to make, they don't really equate happiness with work enough.
Yeah, because there's a lot of people are very unhappy at work, right?
I mean, today's reality check, right? We've been through a lot. We all have. I mean, you talk a lot about happiness in your books and speeches, but I've got a really big question for you right now. What does happiness really look like? And how can we get more of it? Because I think there's a ton of us that want to be happier, especially now. What does that mean? You know, because I don't want to roll my eyes and go, oh, it's a woo-woo topic, because it kind of is. How do we make that matter, though? How do we find that truth?
You know, it's a big question. I mean, Megan, we could spend hours and hours talking about what is happiness, right? To sum that up, it's going to be different for different people. And, you know, for me, you know, personally, I think it's unique to every individual, but I do believe that happiness really is or should be the pursuit of all of us. The number one pursuit in our lives is to be happy, like to feel that joy, to have that sense of presence and to appreciate what's going on in the moment. And that comes when you understand who you are. You get comfortable with who am I and who do I want to be? Because some of it again might be aspirational. So people that are truly living a values-driven life, they're comfortable in their own skin. To me, those are some of the happiest people. They're also the people that aren't always waiting for something else to happen. I mentioned a moment ago. So many people are they're thinking they're going to be happy when I get that promotion, I get that job, I lose that weight, I find that mate. What did I say before? People, places, and things, right? It's not. People need to realize that it's the daily habits that you do to bring your values to life and move your mountains. That's what drives happiness. It's the simple habits that end up having big results on your day-to-day happiness.
And by habits, everyone, we're talking about behaviors.
Exactly.
I mean, that's, I know time is flying here. We're having fun, Greg, but, we're down to our last bit here. I mean, do you want to give the audience some really key takeaways today on what they can do if they're feeling stuck on this? Leaders out there who want to lead, but they're feeling stymied.
I think they need to, first off, take a step back and really, really hone in on what you just said. It comes down to, as my mother called it, she said, the success in life comes down to your attitudes and actions. And if she was sitting here today, I think she would say what she's referring to with attitudes and actions is your thinking and your doing habits, which is why I summarize that as the third truth. Your habits cause your happiness and success. It all comes down to managing your mindset and your actions. So if you think about what we've all talked about here, truth one, you make the rules. Truth two, you've got lots of time, so there's no excuses. You could spend a couple of hours every week at a minimum moving those mountains, right? So knowing what those mountains are, then you need to know what your thinking needs to be and your actions, those habits that will cause your happiness. And when you're truly happy and you're making progress, then you're successful. And that's the key. That's the key. And I'll tee up the fourth and final truth. The word I just said, progress. So I tell people I say to them, this next bit I tell people is going to be worth your price of admission. I'm going to give you the secret formula for happiness. Happiness is your habits plus progress on them. Everyone always says it's the journey, not the destination. And it's so cliche, but it's so true. It's your habits plus making progress. But you need to know what you want to make progress on. Got to know what you want to make progress on, and you've got to get started. And this is the fourth truth that I share in the last minute of all my engagements. Right? We covered you make the rules, so you can't lose in the game of life. That's truth one. Truth two, you make the rules is truth one. Truth two is you've got lots of time. You've got those three buckets: work, sleep, work, and the everything else. And there's lots of time in the everything else bucket when you really analyze it. Then truth three is your habits cause your happiness and success. And the fourth and final truth is just one word: now. My mom wrote, I'm writing this letter to you now in case I don't make it. If she didn't, she wouldn't have had the strength to write it later on. What do you have to do as a leader? I would say to all your listeners, what is it you need to be focused on now? Because by the time someone goes through whether it's my keynote, whether it's my half-day workshop, or I have a 3-day retreat, regardless of how much time I get to spend in front of an audience member, they have now thought through, who am I? What mountains do I want to move? And they know exactly what goals they want to achieve in that mountain. But they have to take action. You have to do something. You have to do something now to get started.
My friends out there in the Work Trends community, I leave you with these 3 words: do the work. Greg Lederman, you're the best. Thanks for stopping by.
Oh my gosh, it's been a blast. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Work Trends Podcast, your favorite source for all that's new and exciting in the world of work. If you love what we do here, make sure to share our podcast with everybody you know. And don't forget to tune in for our very next episode. Catch up with you next time, friends. Thanks to listening to Work Trends from Talent Culture. Join us every Wednesday at 1:30 p.m. Eastern for a live Twitter chat with our podcast guest. To learn more about guests featured on today's show, visit the show notes for this episode at talentculture.com and help us spread the word. Subscribe to Work Trends wherever you listen to podcasts. Leave us a rating, review in iTunes. Share Work Trends with your coworkers, your friends. Look forward to it. See you next time.